Okay, so this fence project is part of a much larger backyard renovation project where I'm building a code-compliant pool fence. You can see here that I've already set the posts in the ground. These are 4x4 posts, which I've notched to accept a top rail and a bottom rail. The posts are set at 6 feet on center. So I've used 12-foot 2x4s for the top rails and bottom rails, and I've offset them by 6 feet so that I wouldn't have any individual post being a joint.
After the posts were set, I went and mounted the top and bottom rails to make sure everything was sized appropriately and in the right position.
So this is a custom designed fence where I'm using wooden posts, wooden rails, but I'm using 1/2-inch galvanized steel EMT conduit, which is typically used for electrical runs, and therefore I'm drilling holes appropriate to sink those EMT conduits as ballisters into the top and bottom rails. So I set up my drill press to bore those holes to the appropriate depth, and I space the holes 4 inches on center, which makes this code compliant for use around a pool. Even Virginia got in on the action every step of the way.
Good job.
I'm coating the entire fence with bare exterior stain and seal, which is really just thinned out latex paint, if you ask me. And so each component needed to be laid out and coated. I just used inexpensive chipper brushes to apply the stain, and I put it on rather thin, knowing that I was going to do at least 2 coats.
Okay, once that first coat's done on the first 2 sides, just flip the boards and get the next 2 sides. First coat. Okay, everything gets a second coat. This coat doesn't have to go on quite as thick because it's not going to soak into the wood the same way as the first coat. Okay, I've got my bundles of 1/2-inch galvanized steel conduit, and these are going to be uprights, much like this. Ballisters, if you will. And since there's 48 inches between the top and the bottom, and I drilled the holes 1.5 inches deep, that's a total of 51 inches. I'll give myself a little bit of wiggle room here for installation, and I'll mark each of these at 50.5. Okay, we're going to use this metal cutting chop saw to chop our metal conduit. And don't forget, eye and ear protection. Safety first.
Once I was happy with that very first baluster, I went ahead and used it to, in an assembly line fashion, go ahead and mark and cut all the rest.
Something I like to do here is, because I have a little bit of burrs here on the end of the pipe, I like to just hit it with a file so that we have an easy time inserting it into the wood. in this end because it wasn't cut. It's not necessary. Then I like to just take the cut edge and just using whatever's handy, in this case the same latex stain that I'm using for the wood. Just like to dip the ends, even this uncut edge. Doop. Just a little bit. Just add a little bit of rust protection.
Yeah, I made a lot of these things, but yeah, filing them by hand? No thank you.
Bottom rails are made the same way as the top rails, with one exception. Down within each hole, I've actually taken a drill and drilled a smaller hole clean through to the bottom to allow for any rainwater that seeps in to have a path to escape.
Then it was on to final assembly. So I started the process of inserting the balusters into the bottom rails.
Okay, once you've got all your tubes mounted, you can go ahead and put on the top part. What I like to do is just sit the board on top of all the balusters. A couple of them will naturally just kind of fall into place in the holes, so you work with those. And then just kind of go along, right? So there's a couple here that are already mounted. And you just take the next ones in line. And because you have a fair amount of wiggle room, just lift those up into the holes. And eventually, you'll drop them back down into the bottom holes. But that way you get them all mounted in the top, sandwich everything down, squish together, and then you can mount them back to the posts. Yes, the garage of projects past. I really should clean that up.
So I just worked my way all the way around the fence perimeter. And you can see here where I started to integrate the fence line into the woodshed pavilion. In the next fence video, I will show you how I've straightened out the top of the fence and also added a cap. Woodshed with all kinds of stuff thrown in it from the winter. Starting to build out the back so that it blends in with the fence.